Hey, what's going on, beautiful jellyfish? It's Tracy. Thanks for hanging out. I'm chilling here with my really wonderful berry hibiscus tea, which is so good. If I can find it, I'll link it down below. It's Whole Foods has this really good, it's called hibiscus berry or berry hibiscus, one of those. It's really good, but it's really expensive. So we found this one from Amazon, but it's still really good. It's a very nice herbal tea, but in a super good mood, wanted to film this video for y'all today on EDH Commanders that are green. And I've done my fun EDH Commanders where I kind of just talk about a bunch of different commanders. I don't really spend a whole ton of time on this, but what I had an idea for was I would go through specific colors. And I first started out with the base, like, green, and I already have a list for blue, and I don't have ones for any other colors yet, but I do want to do those, and I might do some like multicolored commanders as well. Like I'll do like colored pairs. I was like, that has like so many video potential. I was like, I'll have like so many video ideas, which was really great. But I wanted to do this, and kind of my thought process behind this video was to talk about these different commanders and like how I would build them, and like give you kind of like some ideas if you're thinking about building like a new green EDH commander. Some of these are definitely on the more well-known side. Some of these are, you know, might not be like the most common or anything like that, but I kind of just wanted to talk about a couple of them. Let's first off make this bigger because I'm super blind, and I think I said this in one of my other videos, I don't remember which, but Google Images changed it where they now put things on the right side of the screen, and my computer is about an arm's length away, and I have issues seeing that because I wear glasses and I'm very blind. I wear glasses for distance, so I'm like, oh, I'm losing my ability to read well when I don't have glasses. This is not good. Okay. The first commander that I really wanted to talk about was Azuri. Matte mono green Azuri. Other Azuri is really good though, but I want to talk about him, and I think that Azuri works really well as an elf commander, and I think that there's a lot of other commanders that people run elves in, and they do the blue-green elves, but elves really kind of started out, I would say, as being like a mono-green type of thing, and I think Azuri is a really good commander. How I would build him, like if I wanted to build this commander, obviously it's green, so I would definitely want to do a lot of ramp, and I think the whole point of this sort of deck would be something that can go really wide, but also could potentially have the potential to have like a couple of little creatures that you're buffing with him. And the reason that it's really important to have a ton of mana in this deck is because if you have his 5 mana, which says elf creatures you control get +3/+3 and trample until end of turn, so you can just buff your whole team. This ability is a really good ability because it's really good at kind of really any point of the game. Like getting Azuri out in early stages of the game is amazing because also you can regenerate with him, which is really good. Do note it does say another target elf you cannot regenerate him. That would honestly be really dumb. But he's also really good at like any point of the game. Like I think this type of deck would obviously have the intention of winning pretty early on, but I think if you're on a more budget option, I think you could totally build budget elves, and I think Azuri would be a really fair commander for that. I also said like in this deck, if I were to build it, and I would have card draw, and having card draw and having ramp, those things sound really obvious, like you're going to want to do that in every deck, but the reason that I think it's really important to have more card draw in a deck like this is because you're dumping your hand a lot because a lot of your cards are cheap, and if you're ramping really well, then you want to have the opportunity to draw a lot more cards, and if someone board wipes and you don't have Azuri, or you have Azuri and you can't regenerate all of your creatures, you're in a really not great situation. So it would be a really good idea to like have a lot of card draw so you can always kind of have a nice refresh of cards, and if you dump your hand, you can have a way of kind of always drawing. And there's a lot of cards that like draw cards equal to the number of creatures you control, or draw cards equal to the greatest power mode creatures you control. Like there's a bunch of stuff like that in green, and I think yeah, and again, like I said, this video was meant like if I were to build these are the things I would do. I'd have a ton of ramp, elf tribal, obviously, elf synergy, and then also a lot of card draw to like refresh my hand. So that's the first commander I wanted to talk about. The next commander I wanted to talk about is actually another elf commander, and that is Marwyn, the Nurturer. And I remember when this elf came out, and I think people were kind of like not really about it. Again, I think she's a pretty solid budget option. I don't I mean, Azuri is still really good, but I think they're just two different types of creatures. She says whenever another elf enters the battlefield, you put a +1/+1 count on her. The difference I would say between her and Azuri is Azuri's more so going wide. She's kind of going more like, I'm going to try to kill you with commander damage. And again, if I were to do that, that is how I would build her. I would also build her where any sort of ways that you could buff your commander, giving your commander First Strike, Haste, Trample, any sort of things like that if I were to do it. And then a lot of, it does say another elf, and it's not non-token. So I could do like token synergies with this, and I would have like a bunch of tokens that I would like pump out. And then you can add a mana equal to her power. So this is really good for like mana ramping, or you could just try to like kill people with her, really, because if you have like 10 creatures, that's like 10 mana right there. So I would really I would really focus with her on just buffing her a lot so that she can have a lot of different types of abilities and just pumping out elves, mainly like tokens and things like that. And she's also a really cheap commander. Cost-wise, she's 3 mana, which is great, but then also actual like buying cost-wise, she's very inexpensive. So like I said, I think, I mean, her and Azuri, like, I think people would try to like compare and be like, oh, Azuri is, the better like elf commander, but it's like, it's just like a different, probably, yeah, but like it's just a different style. Like if you want to build like, it's interesting because with her you like want a lot of elves that you can realistically swing with. So like if you don't win via commander damage, like this is kind of like a backup plan. So I kind of like that. I like having like alternate win conditions. Like some people's win condition is like, oh, I will have this one creature and then this is the one creature that's going to kill someone with. And then it's like, oh, if they remove your one creature, like what do you do? So like she has kind of a plan where if they do kill her, you still have a ton of other dudes that you can potentially swing with. So I would definitely run Azuri in this deck. I don't know if I'd run her necessarily in Azuri because I think they're two completely different decks in my head. So that's kind of it that I wanted to talk about for elf commanders. But the next commander I wanted to talk about is Multani. And I remember when Multani came out, everyone was like super hyped on him. I almost called him a her. I just noticed like he's holding like this really pretty flower. Interesting. Multani is a very specific type of land type of deck, which is really interesting. There's a lot of different land type of decks in Commander, but Multani is specifically green, so your options are a little bit more limited. But I would say running any type of cards that you can constantly recur your lands, so you're going to be running basics, but also a lot of like specialty type lands. So like example, like the new Fabled Passage, that's a really, really good example of a card like I would totally run in a deck like this if I were to build Multani. And any type of thing where you can put lands into the the graveyard. This deck to me screams more, I'm going to play really big, dumb, aggressive things, but also try to potentially kill you with Multani. Like, Multani is definitely, I feel like, one of your win conditions, if not your primary win condition, because it's +1/+1 for each land you control. So when you're playing it, you're most likely playing it, and you're probably going to have, like, 4, 5, 6 or so lands, or potentially more. And if it kills it, like, you're playing green, so you're obviously going to be ramping and things like that. But when I think Multani, I think any type of land synergy, but I also think of, like, bigger, aggressive creatures. Not necessarily a lot of like smaller creatures. I think a lot of the early stages of the game would be focused on a lot of instants and sorceries relating to getting lands onto the battlefield, but not necessarily playing a lot of like those smaller like creatures, if that makes sense. But I think Multani is a really interesting card, and I think it is for a specific deck, and I think you could play a lot of really interesting, really fun big green creatures here that like and also just cards that like anything to do with lands would like go in this deck. But I think Multani's interesting because if you don't have a deck like this, I think this could, and you're looking for something that's a little bit different, you're looking for another way to kind of like win the game, and you're looking for a different style, I think playing a land type of deck is a really good option, and I think Multani is pretty good. And honestly, I think you could really easily, I mean, pretty much all these commanders I've talked about, I think you could easily do all of these budget, especially this card, because a lot of those mana acceleration cards are really cost-wise cheap. There might be better ones that are a little bit cheaper, there might be better ones, but those ones might be a little bit more expensive. So yeah, overall Multani, super fun card. Awesome. We have 2 more commanders that I wanted to talk about in this video, and the next is Nylea. And I've loved Nylea for honestly a really, really long time. I'm actually really excited to go back to Theros. I wasn't playing at the time that Theros was out, and what I kind of wrote for her is I said like pumping out like large creatures, especially ones that don't have trample, in order for Nylea to give them trample, because she just gives them trample, but obviously you're playing green, so some creatures just might have trample to begin with. And I said a lot things with green mana symbols to make Nylea a creature. So a card that I would 100% run in this deck would be a card like Acidic Slime. I would run this card in this deck anyway, but it does have the 2 green mana symbols. I think sometimes Nylea's run, like I think when you're playing the gods as monocolors, it's a lot more easy to get devotion, obviously. And I think I would want to really focus on this deck on making sure she was a creature a pretty solid amount of the time, because she hits really hard. A 4 mana 6/6 with Indestructible is really, really strong. And honestly, her ability for 4 gets forgotten about a lot because it's not that great. It's 4 mana to pump something +2/+2, but honestly, you're playing green, so you're ramping out a lot, and you're playing, you know, I'm assuming you're playing like mana accelerations and things, and mana dorks that have the green symbol so she can become a creature. Like, you're gonna be able to pump things, and it's really good when you can win with her. Like, she's a really great win condition on her own. Like, sometimes some commanders are so fragile that it's really hard to like win with commander damage with them, but like Nylea could easily do that. And if you're playing, you know, if you give her pump spells, like you can pump her, which is really good, and you can do it as many times as you need to, and you don't need to tap her. So overall, I think Nylea is a really cool creature. I think you could just do like whatever you wanted with her. Like, you could do just like a bunch of amazing green creatures, and I think you would just do really well with her. She's super fun, and yeah. The last card that I want to talk about in this video, it's not to say that I won't do another green part, I probably will, is a more specific type of commander, and that is Reki. And my friend Sam, who I don't know if he's watching my video, but back from one of my friends in New York, he had a Reki deck a really long time ago, and I really haven't seen anyone else I know have this deck, and he's since taken it apart. I asked him about it, and he was like, yeah, no, I don't play that anymore. But Reki's a really interesting card. I think sometimes some older cards get forgotten about. I think he's one of the cards. He's really interesting, really a straightforward card. Whenever you play a legendary spell, you draw a card. This just gets out of hand really, really quickly. This is kind of similar to Nylea in that you could just play like any green type stuff you want, but then you're playing just a bunch of green legendary cards, and you're playing like legendaries, so obviously they're really, really strong. And I would say focus on getting him out pretty early, because the earlier you get him out, you know, the sooner that you can start to draw cards and like refresh your hand. I think you could do a lot of work with Reki and drawing a ton of cards and popping in some like what was I gonna say, some infinite combos. There you go. Popping in some like infinite combos and things like that. And I think he's really simple. There's honestly not a whole lot to say, but I think just like drawing a ton of cards with him and just playing a ton of legendaries, like it's really what he says is like how I would build him, and getting him out as early as possible. So obviously having some mana acceleration to help you out with that, but he's 3 mana, so it's really good. So guys, that is it. Let me know what you think of this video. I'm really excited to film the other parts. Like I said, I kind of have a plan to do like the color combos, and then kind of do like, okay, like red white, like let's talk about red white commanders, and like limiting it to 5, because some of these can like take a little bit longer to like kind of go through, and I didn't want to make the video like super long by talking about 10, and kind of I wanted to talk about these like again in depth, like how I would build this. And also I might potentially do, I have it on my videos to film list of like talking about budget commanders. I asked about this in another video, but let me know if like that's something that you guys would be interested in, seeing like budget commanders, because I think it'd be interesting to do an Azuri build and kind of like do that, and like how I would do that budget. And let me know what you guys think of that, or if you have any other video requests, because I always love to take those. So that is it for this video. Thank you so much for hanging out, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.